Mr. Wooster's bags.
(1989), a year of revolution in Eastern Europe, which spread from town to town, city to city, nation to nation. The domino effect. But where will it end? Already, Britain is secretly preparing for popular revolt. Nuclear bunkers are being redesigned in case of civil upheaval. In the event of revolution, how will the Prime Minister react?
I'll shoot the whole damn lot of you!
Spitting Image, back Sundays at 10:05 on Central.
Stuart Sutcliffe was a founder member of the Beatles, and his story is told later tonight on Central in Celebration, and that's at 10:35.
The man from Del Monte knows there is one moment of perfect rightness. Only at that moment will he say yes to that distinctive taste and freshness. Because only the best is good enough. Del Monte, say yes to the best.
Well, baby, I'm thinking about your chocolate. Well, baby, I'm thinking about your taste. Well, baby, I'm thinking about your chocolate. Thinking about your taste.
Follow me, Metro number 1. 5-speed box, okay. Hurry. New suspension, okay. Wait. Show me. Not specified. Enhance. Rover engine not specified. Divert engine. Uh-oh. Engine oversize, engine oversize. Enlarge car, reposition engine. Enjoy.
Pint of brew, please. Make that too. Didn't stop for a chaser then.
But
Between March 1942 and August 1943, nearly 1 million Jews were massacred at Treblinka. One of the men responsible was known as Ivan the Terrible. In 1988, John Demjanjuk, a car worker from Ohio, was convicted and sentenced to death by an Israeli court for the crimes committed by Ivan the Terrible. But is this the same man or a case of mistaken identity? Central has been examining the evidence. Don't miss a Tuesday Viewpoint 90 special at 10:35 on Central. Ivan the Terrible.
You're watching Central.
The news from ITN.
Tightening the purse strings, Lamont warns no tax cuts. Haughey under pressure to tighten extradition law. Police keep the parties apart in Romanian elections. And in Yugoslavia, players join in the soccer violence. Good evening. Norman Lamont, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, has warned that the scope for tax cuts before the next election is extremely limited, even without spending increases. He said the government had very little room for manoeuvre and the priority must be to get inflation down. Mr. Lamont, who will oversee this year's public spending round, said he expects negotiations with his cabinet colleagues to be difficult.
Some of the big spending ministries, like health and education, will be pressing for billions of pounds in extra spending to pay for reforms and ensure they're in good shape ahead of a general election. But the real headache is Chris Patton's Environment Ministry. To minimise the electoral damage of the poll tax, the government may have to find £2 to £3 billion more to help the worst off. The Chancellor's making no secret of the fact that this public sector spending round will be an even more bruising affair than usual. The city believes inflation could be a percentage point higher than forecast by the end of the year, and if the poll tax is going to get more money, where will it come from? Defence is the prime target. The government could argue that the improved international atmosphere means £1 billion might be saved there. The spending squeeze meant the Treasury today effectively ruled out any chance of tax cuts in the next budget.
Prospect of tax cuts at the moment does not look very good. These things are always uncertain, but we have very little room for manoeuvre, and we have got to get on top of inflation. That is the top priority before everything else.
What's alarmed the spending ministries is that the government will have to decide within a matter of some weeks how much money they'll put aside to soften the impact of poll tax. That could mean there's little money left for them. The only other option of putting taxes up would be ruled out as politically totally unacceptable. Mark Webster, ITN, Westminster.
An Irish government minister has called for tough new laws on extradition, saying the freeing of convicted IRA members by the Supreme Court there had appalled all decent people. Desmond O'Malley, who leads the junior party in Ireland's coalition government, told a meeting last night that the Republic must not become a safe haven for terrorists.
Irish Prime Minister Charles Haughey has already made it plain to Mrs Thatcher that he sees no reason to change the existing extradition laws. Today he was saying nothing further on the subject. But the Irish court's decision to release 3 men earlier this year, all wanted in Northern Ireland on terrorist charges, infuriated the British government. The British say they've identified 10 loopholes in the Irish law which have allowed terrorists to escape justice. Ireland's Progressive Democrats, Mr Haughey's junior coalition partner, is increasing the pressure on the Irish Prime Minister for much tougher extradition laws.
You have, I think, to educate people to an understanding of the difficulties and the complexities, and then try to bring them along with the way that you believe it can be solved or at least improved.
The chairman of the Tory backbench Northern Ireland Committee doubts that Mr Haughey can be swayed.
Mr Haughey is not as committed at all times and in all circumstances to the elimination of terrorism as he ought to be.
But a former Northern Ireland secretary believes Mr O'Malley's call will find support in the Republic.
Oh, I think they've touched a nerve, particularly amongst the younger people. Something's got to be done about this. It's shameful that this is happening. What on earth are we talking about a united Ireland when we offend a million loyalist unionists in the north who we want to welcome into our country? This can't go on.
The Prime Minister, arriving back at Downing Street this afternoon, will no doubt welcome additional pressure for tightening the extradition laws. But in reality, there's unlikely to be any progress until after a report from an Anglo-Irish committee on extradition, and that might not be for months. Simon Cole, ITN, in Northern Ireland.
A Romanian opposition leader was forced to abandon a big election rally today when supporters of the ruling National Salvation Front moved in to disrupt it. The opposition parties say it's another example of the intimidation they've been subjected to throughout the campaign.
The leader of Romania's Liberal Party travelled to Brasov in Transylvania, planning to make a key election speech before 10,000 of his supporters. But his words were drowned by a rival crowd supporting the National Salvation Front. The front and its leader, Romania's President Ion Iliescu, are expected to score an overwhelming victory in next week's election. The opposition parties complain they don't stand a chance when their leaders are prevented from addressing the public. The police seemed reluctant to become involved, despite President Iliescu's promise to prevent such intimidatory tactics. Finally, they formed a line between the rival crowds, but made no attempt to stop the front supporters, reducing the rally to a chaotic shouting match, before it was eventually abandoned. In the capital, the day began with prayers at the street corner where young revolutionaries were gunned down by the Securitate during the Christmas Revolution. Several thousand supporters of the Peasants' Party marched through Bucharest. Again, the main theme of their rally was the alleged intimidation of opposition candidates. To the obvious approval of the crowd, a British Euro MP warned that the Salvation Front would be made to pay for any malpractices.
And there is a huge amount of European community economic aid ready to come to your assistance, which will not come if these elections are not free and fair.
The leader of the Peasants' Party, Mr. Ion Rațiu, was still predicting a surprise victory.
You think you can win, sir? I think I've got a very good chance.
But the latest opinion polls predict that the Salvation Front will take 60% of seats in the new Romanian parliament. Paul Davis, ITN, Bucharest.
Serious nationalist rioting is still going on tonight around a top Yugoslav soccer ground. Rival Serb and Croat fans are fighting running battles with police. The trouble started before a match between Dynamo Zagreb and Red Star Belgrade. Some of the players who got caught up in the violence will play in the World Cup next month. Harry Smith at ITN reports.
The trouble began about half an hour before the match was due to start. Visiting fans from Belgrade began ripping up seats and hurling them at the Zagreb supporters. Observers blamed the trouble on ancient rivalries between the two Yugoslav republics of Croatia, which includes Zagreb, and Serbia, whose capital is Belgrade. The fighting went on for several minutes before police moved in. Journalists at the match said the authorities appeared totally unprepared for the trouble. The fighting spilled onto the pitch, and at one stage, two of the Zagreb players became involved. It was 20 minutes after the first fighting that police reinforcements arrived. They charged with batons and fired tear gas into the crowd in an attempt to disperse them. By this time, the match and all thoughts of football had been abandoned as the few remaining fans turned their wrath on firemen brought in to help clear the stadium. One fire crew, cornered by a hostile mob, had to force their way to safety. Up to 30 fans and police were injured. Police said tonight they were still fighting running battles with fans in the streets around the stadium.
Here, Coast Guard say they're winning the battle to control the oil slick off Devon. The spill happened yesterday when a Liberian-registered oil tanker was involved in a collision with a trawler 14 miles off Start Point.
The tanker was underway again this morning, leaving behind it an oil slick that marine pollution specialists and the Coast Guards have for much of the day been battling to disperse. 1,000 tonnes of crude oil had yesterday leaked from the tanker, the Rose Bay. A small hole in the side, the only visible sign of its collision with a trawler off the South Devon coast. The Department of Transport mobilised its resources. Spotter planes quickly established the size of the slick. Aircraft then sprayed the area with detergent to break up the oil. Tugs were also at the scene, a combined effort that is being judged tonight a great success. The operation is being coordinated by Brixham Coast Guards, who say the good weather has helped them, but warn that the situation may soon change.
Our actions with dispersant are working on the slick, and we are hopeful that we can deal with it before it gets ashore. But of course, the weather conditions are changing all the time, and we have to reassess the situation really on an hourly basis.
Greenpeace have also been monitoring events, and early tomorrow morning a new survey will begin to see if the clearing up operation needs to be continued. The latest reports say the slick is shrinking, and that although some oil might reach the coastline, the threat of a major problem for Devon's beaches is now receding.
The government is coming under attack from environmental groups for blocking international moves to cut the output of carbon dioxide, one of the main greenhouse gases. The Environment Minister, David Trippier, has arrived in Norway for an intergovernment meeting. He says any decision should be put off until after major research is published later this year.
Carbon dioxide pollution, mainly from traffic and power stations, is dominating the Environment Conference of 34 industrialised countries at Bergen. The gas is the major cause of global warming. An international alliance of green groups, industry and trade unions want a 20% cut by the end of the century, but Britain and America are refusing to negotiate.
Global warming is happening, and the government has no excuse. It should now agree to these very modest reduction targets for CO2 emissions, as are proposed by the majority of European states at the Bergen Conference.
Countries like Norway agree, but Environment Minister David Trippier, leaving for Bergen today, wants to wait for scientific reports.
We now have 2 further reports to come out where leading scientists and politicians and economists in the world have put their minds together to producing authoritative and qualitative reports, which will be coming out before the end of the year. There is no way that the Norwegians could wish to circumvent that qualitative research which is being done. And for goodness sake, we only have a few months to wait before we have to make our decisions.
Mr. Trippier wants to concentrate on the pollution crisis in Eastern Europe. He hopes British technology can clean up places like this chemical complex in Romania. He'll be inviting Eastern European ministers over to Britain and offering cheap loans to buy information, training and equipment.
Thousands of people from all over Ireland have turned out to pay their last respects to Cardinal Thomas O'Fee, who died on a pilgrimage to Lourdes last Tuesday. Many waited patiently outside St Patrick's Cathedral in Armagh before filing past the coffin. The Requiem Mass will be held tomorrow night. Rugby League, Widnes have won their 3rd successive Rugby League First Division Premiership title. They beat Bradford Northern 28-6 at Old Trafford. The first try came after just 60 seconds when fullback Alan Tate put through Les Holiday. Although Widnes played the second half with only 12 men after scrum half Paul Hume was sent off, Bradford never